what are the risks of this data set existing in terms of the conversation it can facilitate, the misuse of it? So actually, something like the census in Scotland, where we now have this kind of national percentage for the LGBTQ community. So we know that 4% of the population, age 16 plus, are LGBT plus, and 0.4% are trans. And how those numbers can kind of help facilitate multiple sides of the argument. So those numbers can be both too big and too small. So I think that kind of weaponization of how the kind of storytelling around data, we weren't having that conversation. We're speaking a lot about data protection, about GDPR, about how data is stored and archived and moved around, but not so much about the kind of the harms, the real world harms that follow when a right-wing media takes a percentage and turns it into an entire media arc for that entire week's kind of coverage, which has a lot of devastation for those who are kind of identifying that way or see themselves in that way. So yeah, I'm very keen for that kind of lens of harm and protection to be zoomed out beyond the typical kind of staff training we get around data protection to think actually what are the broader harms of collecting this data.